All right. So first of all, walking out here, it's always nice to check and see if someone is on top here. But I wouldn't like. I know you guys. This is a sub and everything, but just in general, don't try and predict that someone is going to walk up top because you guys end up wasting Rami for it. I took a look at this VOD a little bit earlier. So playing against a team that bunkers on this point here, I know you guys have typically done like a play kind of slow and poke for an opportunity. Problem is a lot of that is kind of almost completely relying on Karo to hit some kind of headshot or do some like a major amount of damage for a cooldown to force. And that is not something you guys want to really rely on as your only win con. So yeah, and just like playing slow up here means that their support is going to do a lot of healing because you guys just have more poke than they do, and their BAP is going to just charge ult faster. So it's not the best thing to do. Typically, if you see that they're running on the low ground here, what my team likes to do is we will have our hit scan player, which is sometimes we do Soju, sometimes we do Hanzo. It's kind of a preference thing. The Hanzo is really good for like long range picks. Soju has a lot more mobility, and also if someone's hiding like a fucking like corner here, you can just use E, and then they kind of have to move away, or they just get really pressured. And also if someone happens to walk on you up here, you have slide to get out. It's kind of just a preference thing though. But what we will do is we will have our Hanzo or Soju hide on these stairs, and the other 4 players will walk all the way around here. And usually teams will try to walk on the inside here, and they'll just hold these corners here. And we will drop from the high ground here. And as soon as we drop from the high ground here, we call it. Our Hanzo or Soju will peek from here, and we have a pincer immediately starting this fight off. So we have pressure coming from this angle here. I don't have my epic pen up. Either way, pressure from this side here and from this side over here. It's pretty when you drop from here, you aren't really gonna have a poke phase. It's kind of skipping a lot of that step because you are setting up a high risk, high reward angle, and your goal is to put so much pressure out from the front line that they aren't able to turn around and do anything, and they can't waste resources to look at your Hanzo or your Sojourn because they're so focused on your front line. So you drop from the high ground, your Hanzo peaks at the same time. You guys look for some kind of way to walk in. The best way is for your Mei, because they're most likely they're going to be sitting in this room here. All you have to do is look for the enemy Mei and wall off her sightline, just wall right in front of her, so that she cannot wall your team out of the points or wall your tank in alone. So then as soon as you are able to do that, the rest of it, your like Mei, Lucio, and Ram are able to walk in safely, and either or Lucio can kind of just stay back as well because he's a little squishy, but Ram can get in safely because has a less chance to get walled off, and also is going to look for pressure on their squishies who are also being shot at by your Hanzo or Soju. Let me think. Sometimes teams that are used to this happening will sometimes, or just like if they think quickly, they will TP up to your hit scan player and try and force them out or kill them. Best thing I can say is your hit scan calls that out as soon as you see it, and the rest of the front line will push in even harder because they're either they're most likely going to try and send like their sim and maybe like one other player to try and force out this hit scan, which means that there's 2 less. They're trading 2 people for 1 person back here. So then you guys will try and push in harder in the front line to try and either win the fight or force these guys to come back. Let me think.
So
Yeah.
real quick, this is a good way to set up for first fight. So for my my VOD watchers, and Karo, hello. It's really important you guys communicate like Malkery talked about it, but we really have to stress the importance of the communication between both sides walking at the same time. So Kara, if you reveal yourself before Ant's ready to set up and drop, then they're gonna know you're there, and it's way easier for them to set up angles or just wall an LOS of you away, and then they can take the fight 5v4, and then you guys lose. And then Ant, if you walk without Kara, right, without Kara peeking, then once again you're gonna be like a 4v5 situation, and that's also bad. If Kara peaks like a second late, like that's kind of fine, right? But it's like something you guys have to like really work on communication about, similar to like a dive comp, 3-2-1 it, just go. That's like the most important thing because without this off angle, this fight won't work. So that's I also on other maps, I've encouraged in the past about my DPS looking for off angles. In this Ram comp, we're gonna try looking for that more. I think it's really strong. It works. It's gonna win us this first fight a lot. But now Malkery, since this is like a first fight plan, can you go over how we should hold the point in future fights or retakes? So it's
Wait,
probably
hold the
gonna be a little
fight or
different.
retakes? Which one do you want?
Either one, both of them, but one
All
at a
right.
time.
I'm not gonna lie, retakes, honestly, you can kind of do the same thing. Sometimes if you're scared of them, like if they had already gotten ready for TP, you can kind of like try and sit on front line, maybe look for some kind of opportunity to like as Sojourn especially.
So
You can try and look to
is this
slide.
assuming they're giving high?
Yeah, typically a lot of these teams will give high if they want a bunker point. If they are on high, you just don't walk through this joke here.
So we're
If you
walking.
see that they're on high here, like if you just like quickly like look out, you just see that they're like hard spamming or or just looking at it, you just walk through main. Main is a lot easier to walk through just because this is a tiny ass door. Um but a lot of teams, because they just are better at sitting down and setting up, they're just probably gonna just set up on point here. Maybe they'll have a TP up here, but they're not really gonna do that much. But retakes against these kinds of teams, you can either do one or two things. You can either some people like to just completely swap their comps after first fight if they to just like try and like go to some kind of farm mercy, echo mercy, that kind of stuff. Or trying to take this away. I would say it's like generally it's just harder to do it. Like control points are just a lot of the time like a I think it's like 80 something percent or something is like really high chance of the team that wins the first fight kind of just wins the map just because of how easy it is to defend. Um but I would say it is using some kind of ult advantage if you have that, or you can try to honestly as give me a second. My brain isn't working. You can try to do the same thing again with your Hanzo or Sojourn on the off angle. And then just try and because usually by second fight you'll have some kind of ults to utilize or be close to ults you can utilize. Unless it was like a hard sweep. But it's just like try and build your ults and try and use them faster than the enemy team because it's a lot easier to hit first than to hit second. It's honestly really hard just attacking this at a second time, especially if they're ready for it. Because this leaving your DPS behind is, like I said, it's a high risk, high reward. Which a lot of teams aren't gonna really expect, but doing it multiple times in a row, they'll most definitely expect it. If anything, if they're really used to it, or you think they're used to it, I'd say because again, because the second fight you're going to be closer to ults, then would be a time you guys try and play a little bit like farther range, like just like poking out and trying to get your ults. I will say as well for you guys' first fight here, you guys should definitely I think ideally what you do is you have your ram on like either this side or this side, and then your Mei is on the opposite side. Because from the way them from their Ryan's perspective, he's most likely going to want to swing on something. Obviously, if they're sitting on this corner here, if you both are having your Ram and your maze stacked together, he's going to be swinging at both of them at the exact same time. You want to have him make some kind of decision or just no decision at all, and have extra mini kind of angles of pressure here. And then also being separated from someone else, the maze going to have, if they want to walk out, you can just try and go for a wall here. Also, I do want to mention for this first fight here, you guys sonar in the back here, and you guys see their Lucio and their Bap are playing outside of the point here. If you guys if you wanted to, because you have active scouting on them, you can just wall this door off and take a 3v or take a 5v3. Just like hard speed in, use them immediately, try and force out cooldowns or get some kind of kill while their supports are walled off, because Bap and Lucio don't have enough burst damage to kill a wall very fast. And it's just like looking for some kind of like, just honestly, the most I can say is trying to look for some kind of opportunity to either like split off their line of sight, split off some kind of DPS. Like if their sim also as well. What is it? She's playing over here. If you wanted to, just like put a wall kind of like here or something, and walk on the sim. Just like or just even just wall up the supports as well. But just like look for opportunities to, like, you don't have to look for, I just want to split somebody off for just a kill. You can also think, if I wall here, they're just not gonna have sight of the rest of the team of the fight.
Okay.
And they're playing actually in a really, really, like, again, like here, if you wanted to force out their maze ice block, just put a wall right here, walk on the maze, force out ice block, or just like their team is playing super, super split.
Okay.
Let me think. Yeah, honestly, Bap and Hanzo, if you like, again, playing on this angle is just like, you can play in high ground. I saw Kara was also on this low ground as well, which is fun. But yeah, especially with how, okay, they do mess up their wall here as well, which is another thing. If you see that if they waste their wall here because they wanted to walk on your ram, you can also use that to, like, again, wall off somebody's line of sight or try and wall somebody in and walk in on that.
Real
Yeah.
quick, I want to bring in the terminology of triggers. Does anybody know what a trigger is? Or want to take a guess?
I do.
You do? All right, Buddy, what's a trigger? What's a trigger?
So basically, like if some important person got killed, then that's your trigger. You could go in, or like they use a really important cooldown, and then you can capitalize on it.
Yes,
Right?
pretty much.
Yeah.
So, previously, we've talked about how we start with a poke phase, kind of, and transition to a brawl phase. With Malkery's new way of taking the first fight, there's not really too much of a poke phase. It's brawl pretty fast. But like the way we're set up right now, there's definitely a poke phase at the beginning, right? We can't just walk in if nothing happens. So we're looking for like walls, right? So our wall can be a trigger. If they waste wall, that can be a trigger. If they throw ammo into the void, that can be a trigger. So Arctos, I know in the scrim last night, you seemed pretty confused about like wins poke versus win brawl. So triggers is like the concept we have to talk about. So I've told you in the past, like, call cooldowns is like a team, all of you. These cooldowns are like, they're important to call because the cooldowns are triggers usually. So in this case, we call this wall. Then Arctos, it's super safe for you to just go walk in and wall, and then we can brawl off that right away. Or if, like Malkery said, we sonared their supports and we saw their supports were split, that's not a cooldown, but it is a trigger because we can wall that and we can go. So this is kind of what we're talking about. I know Malkery was talking about it, so you guys have already heard this already. But I wanted to bring the word into it because I want us to use that word and talk about that in the future. Anyways, okay, you can continue.
Yeah. Also about that, I will also say, because Keegan was saying like that some things can be a trigger and you can walk in on that. Don't see, like, if you see a Maywall like this, don't like instantly just turn your brain off and just press W and walk in. It's more of a you have an advantage. You can walk up, and you just have an advantage as well. You have a better chance of being able to just walk in, because I have met some teams that will purposely throw an ability because they plan that a team will turn their brain off and walk in and immediately like count it. Because like first fight it's fine, but when you start getting into the later fights and the longer fights or just later fights, some like I don't know about now, but there are a lot of teams that like to throw away an ability or an important cooldown, and then immediately if you walk in, use some kind of ability use some kind of ult and just fucking murder you.
It's Giga Brain. Okay, Giga Brain.
But just yeah, triggers. Keep in mind of that.
I
let
got
me
another
think.
question here. Not gonna be super easy to show, but we talked about retakes. Can we talk about where to hold? I think holding's pretty like easy, and I think we have a decent grasp on it. But I want to go over it anyways.
Yeah. Also, I will say this was an amazing wall because you guys are able to force the Rein to shield, do a shit ton of shield damage, and you force on May wall or May ice block. So now their May has 0 abilities. That can be another trigger because this May has no defensive utility except for Immo, which I'm pretty sure they're about to use anyway.
Yeah.
I might be close to using it.
Also,
Maybe.
There,
your
yeah.
guys' tank burner kind of make it into this fight, by the way.
Yeah.
You guys didn't lose because of you guys, unfortunately.
It was really unfortunate. Either way, holding it. So if you see a team that is running this sim May comp, obviously you know they want to try and bunker down on point and just sit there. All right. Do you want me to talk? Okay, Keegan, do you want me to talk about holding against a specific comp or comps in general, or?
I guess this specific comp's the most common one. We don't really run into other kind of like dive comps or anything here right now.
All right.
So it could be like this or just other brawl comps.
All
We'll
right.
see.
So, if you win the fight here, you walk on this high ground and you start looking for scouting. So like Hanzo sonar arrow, if you sonar like right like I think right here, you can see if they're walking in like down main here. Like again, like easy sonar, you sonar like in this room here, see if they're walking up here. Try and find out as early as you can where they're walking. Because that will determine obviously where you fight. If they're walking down main, which is the most common thing that teams with the sim will do, they'll most likely TP across here and look to like walk on a point. Do the same exact thing as I said first fight. You like have your Hanzo, you walk around with your if you see that they're in main, honestly, just start walking like 4 of you down over here. Or just like immediately. Because like it doesn't if they're sitting over here, like it doesn't matter if they're looking to TP up here, they're gonna have to walk up a little bit further. It's gonna be a lot more obvious. Give Kara a bit of time to react to that, and can also call it. Them having the high ground, like up here, is fine, especially because you guys. I'm not saying you guys instantly like drop as soon as you see they're in main. I'm saying you guys set up like here to like get ready to shoot at them when they TP. Also, and just like also, because sometimes like Rhines will just like not shield TP. You guys can sometimes just destroy TP if you all focus it down. You can sometimes destroy TP before like so someone might be just late on taking TP, and then you can just like if you honestly wanted to, hard just amp speed walk into this person, or you can wall off of this choke here as well, and then amp speed walk into the rest of the team. Just whatever you want to do. Let me think. Like, and also keep in just like abuse the fact that you have a tank that has range. Because it's just like stand on this high, like just honestly stand on this bridge here, scout, look for where they are. It doesn't matter. You don't have to hold this corner right here if you see they're on Rhine, because that's what they want you to do. Because their Rhine wants to be able to swing onto your ram. You want to like, you want them to have to like walk out here, and then also like I think you like just like look for a wall to just like try and catch a few like you don't even have to only catch one person, just catch like if you like get rid of only one person, they're trapped in this room, that's fine. Like you had that you just made the fight a 5v4. But going through this room, they're going to take a lot of poke, they're gonna have to use a lot of cooldowns and lose a lot of shield to walk into you guys. And you guys just have better poke, and their sim is not going to do a lot of damage at the start of the fight because her beam needs charge. So here, if anything, you can use an early ult to try and like prevent that. Like if they're in this room, if you want, you can try and drag them when they start walking. You can window when they start walking. But honestly, like unless you see an ult from them, because they're gonna have to use an ult if they want to win walking this far out. Or unless you like somehow something unlucky happens, you really don't have to use ults if they walk up top, which is another reason why you almost never see a sim team walk up top here, just because it's just so bad for them. But always be ready for it. Always just be scouting. I honestly, my favorite sonar is just putting a sonar in on this wall here, and then you just or just like a sonar just like right over here, so that you can just see like if they're in main. If anything, as well, they might be walking from spawn just directly to here. You can put a sonar just right here.
All right. I think that covers it, Malkery. Good morning. Want to talk
yeah,
about?
I would say as well against mirror comps. It's honestly same thing, just because if they're running a mirror comp and they walk out here, they're still gonna have to use a lot of cooldowns to be able to walk out, and they're gonna be taking a lot of poke anyway.
Mhm.
But they're just gonna have to use relatively less resources compared to the Rhine, just because their Rhine has only one shield. And then for things like if you see a regular team that doesn't have a sim, or they just end up or the sim team just ends up walking anyway. This is another situation where like even like right here, you can look for a wall. Like if you react late, you can look for a wall here, you can look for a wall in here, or just like here or something. Just like try and cut them off and just just do a shit ton of poke. And that's why like typically like so long story short, I'm rambling. Just sit on this bridge. Like sit on this bridge. If you see them rotating, you can try and rotate to meet them if they're on sim comp. If anything, you can just like if they're on the same comp, it can be kind of iffy just because the Hanzo, if you're on a mirror comp, is scary. So if you want, you can take like a poke battle. If you think you can win it, you can again rotate around here, look for a pincer.
All right, cool.
Yeah.
Well, I don't want to make it too long because I want to 100% make sure Carl can't watch it. If it's a fucking 2 hour long VOD, then they're not gonna watch it. So before we end, does anybody have any questions? Who's here? Arctos, PSI, Froggy, maybe even Mighty. Are there any questions?
Mm.
No, not really.
I'm just happy to know it doesn't only rely on one thing.
Yeah, it doesn't really rely on one thing. Then
Yep.
we'll work on this. We'll play Nepal again next scrim. We'll take the first fight a little bit differently. We'll make sure Carl and have it are caught up. Then if you guys want, well, if we get any good maps, we can VOD again next Thursday, and it'll be a little bit longer VOD that covers more like actual of our fights rather than just talking about what could happen. But I wanted to go over the basics 100%, make sure we all get it. So are we good? I think we're good.
Yeah.